stand and say the pledge.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Okay, so just a couple of brief announcements. Next month will be Greg Biersting, who's talking about the trolleys to Alcott. And that will be on the 15th at 7 p.m. May 15th, and that will be it for when we're off for the summer. So we'll be picking up our lecture series again come fall. That'll be the last one again. That's the 15th at 7 p.m. right here. And Haus, the museum, is going to open May 4th at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So if you want to stop by right on Niagara Road there and take a look at the museum, will be nice and cleaned up and ready for you to see. We've got some new stuff. We got a new ramp, which George just put in today.
Thank you.
We look forward to seeing you there. And without further ado, we've got today Frank Clement. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes.
And he's going to tell us all about the bricks he has here. Now, I'm guessing that Frank, he doesn't have a podium or a presentation, so if you want to gather around, because I imagine you're going to be talking
Yeah, I'm
about
gonna pick each one up, and might be, if you move over this way a little bit, be easier on the old timer.
I asked him if he wanted one.
I don't?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Everybody's okay with where they sit?
Okay, I want to thank you people for inviting me out here to Wheatfield. Our residence is out in Orchard Park, right near the new Buffalo Bill Stadium, which I can't afford tickets. But the wife and I have a brick museum. You're welcome to come out once this weather starts getting a little warmer as it was today. And in this collection, there is approximately 10,000 bricks from all over the world. And I traveled extensively the Hudson River, Ohio, Mississippi, all over the United States. And I have quite a foreign collection from New Zealand and every place from Ukraine, Russia, everything you can imagine. What I'd like to start out is, in our museum, we have plenty of implements where the brick making stuff was used, tools and different wheelbarrows and different varieties of things. We also have an insulator collection, the telephone insulators that go on the poles. They separate the pile of bricks and the shelving, and the color adds a little bit to it if you're not looking at it. And I decided that I should make the Christmas tree on them, so I have a 12-foot Christmas tree with 4 red lights that I put on it. But this past Christmas, you couldn't get from here to that table near that tree there with the amount of snow that we had on the ground up there.
Wow.
So that was a thing there. We also, in there, thing of different implements and stuff like that. We have a collection that I would like to bring to a lecture here maybe next year, but I need 4 or 5 good able men. Those manhole covers that I've collected through the United States. And that is heavy. And like I said, our museum has got on display approximately 10,000 bricks. And we're in the University of Buffalo. We have an international web page. Free graduates through the UB University, which I'm very proud of because I don't like to start with too much money. They find other ways to take it from that there. But first thing before I start, I'd like to ask, is there any military men in here? You are. Okay, well thank you for your service. And what I do, I will start out with this particular brick. We've all heard of the Vietnam War. North Vietnam, terrible situation, how many pilots we lost. Well, when the pilots were shot down in North Vietnam, they were incarcerated in Hanoi. Okay, the name of the prison was the Hanoi Hilton. They nicknamed, that's the slang name that the GIs gave that to the pilots in that there. The prison was made by the French Indochina in North Vietnam. The communists took it over and decided to incarcerate the American pilots. This brick is documented, came from an Air Force pilot that served 4 years in the prison in Hanoi. He lived in Hawaii, and I was able to get that several years ago, which I'm quite proud because I have a military background myself. I thank you, man, for your service. Man. So, what we'll do, we'll go back. Some of our stuff is early 200 AD Roman Empire. Okay. I have probably 100 different articles from the Roman Empire. What we have on this particular picture, some of the dog bones that they had made and interlocked for on their roadways there. This was taken off of the Danube River. I had a friend that was an archaeologist, historian, architecture, and that there, and before 9/11, he had passed away, would bring me several goodies every time he went back and forth there, so I was able to acquire some real fancy stuff there. The neatest one I really like is this Roman medallion. Whether it was a pennant or whatever it was found over there. You're more than welcome to come up and take a look at it, and I would ask if probably don't handle it, I wouldn't want to see it get dropped. And this is one of the tiles with the Roman numerals that are on there. And I've got stuff with cat prints and dog prints and different things in there. And one big tile that came out of a Roman shower, and that there, it's got vents in it there because they actually had steam baths and stuff like that. They were very engineered type of people. So when we get back into this fella here, Connor, was a tile maker in 1888. I picked this up somewhere, and he was born 1858, and he made his dole out of business cards were on these bricks, and that so it's quite a little collector's item this time. Well, I have over 200 varieties of miniature bricks, because in the 1800s and early 1900s, the salesman could not load up the horse and buggy with 10-pound bricks and start traveling and dealing on his wares. So what he would do, he would dole out these miniature bricks. This is a buffalo brick, a miniature brick, but the significance of this is it's the Pan American Exposition 1905. I've only ever seen 2 of these. But this is just an idea what a miniature brick would look like there. But most of them have the local Acme shale brick out in North Towns and all them different places like that. Very sought after by collectors. The fellow in Niagara Falls, I have quite a collection of Lincoln memorabilia bricks and that there. I'm affiliated with 4 or 5 different bottle clubs here, Utica and all the way up Rochester, Syracuse, and that there. And one of the bottle collectors in Niagara Falls said, I got this Lincoln head for you, would you like it? I said, well, sure. But what it says on the back, Alfred J. Snyder, tile, Niagara Falls, New York. So he doled these out as advertisement and that there, and I've ever seen them around any place like that. And if anybody has any questions, surely ask. I'd be glad to try to answer with you. And that's it. So, and then our club, we put out 3 journals a year. Our international brick collectors that I belong to, I'm just one brick short of being president. That's okay. We're worldwide. There's about 500 collectors over. But when you narrow it down to the top 50 and narrow it down to the top 20 and down to the top 10, I'm right down at the number 2 category. I could have the biggest collection in the world. A fellow buddy of mine in Oklahoma is in the Guinness Book of Records, and he got that way because he accumulated a fellow's collection in Kansas that was offered to me 10, 12 years ago, but I could not afford to ship 7,000 bricks from Kansas City up to Orchard Park. So I let it go and ended up with some of the good stuff. So This here is an Indian. The Indians are very, very prominent in that there. There was a big brick company in Corey, Pennsylvania. Now, I went to Columbia, Missouri for an auction to get this tobacco store Indian, Hiawatha. Now, if you look and know anything about tobacco store Indians, they were made out of chalkware, very cheap to make, and this and that. Most of you see the paint was, they were chipped very bad. This particular item that I've got in the museum is made out of terracotta, made out of brick. It weighs about 60 pounds, very heavy, collectibles signed by the artist and what have you. I was offered several $1,000s for this particular item, and I don't want to part with it yet, so I'm quite proud to have that. I also have on the wall, if you look on my webpage, in the museum, I have Chief Tecumseh Indian head that I got out of Appalachia, out of the general store. A fellow friended me, and I was able to put that in the collection and that there. So it's very interesting stuff, the Indian stuff. If I'm going a little fast, this is a brick I did not bring along from the museum. It was made in 1778, the Revolutionary War. The town of Amesbury, New England, John Patchen, 1778, July 16th. John was a happy-go-lucky brickmaker. Back then, they were mom and pop operation. He went to this farm, the clay deposits were there. He made the bricks and set up and put the house together for the people there. Might have taken him 2 years of that. Several of them were engraved. I happen to have 2 of them. The one that I have here on this magazine should be in the archives of Massachusetts. It's priceless. It's very, very. It took me months and months to find out who this John Patchen character was in that there. And he was a little brickmaker in that there. So brick collecting and looking at bricks is actually not boring. It's very fascinating for me. I've done extensive trips down to the Hudson River and all the different places. And 2 days ago, I was in St. Mary's, Pennsylvania, and brought stuff back to add to the collection. And I think I added 5 different bricks that I didn't have in that there. And that's where it is. Now, you got the hand on. I'll just go across here. Prince Charles and Diane, 1981 was the royal wedding. Unfortunately, she passed away and had a lot of good things in her program and that there, and King Charles and his queen there. Now, they had not come out with a brick for him because the brickyard went out of business. The Progress was a brick company. If back in 81, you went to the brickyard and built a house with their bricks, you would get one of the Prince Charles and Diane royal. Very, very sought after by collectors worldwide. Wow. I just recently traded with a fellow for a high-end trade item from Melbourne, Australia, with the Royal Crown, Queen Elizabeth, Melbourne, Australia, 1954 Olympics when she was there. And I also have the original Melbourne Olympic brick from 1954 and that there. But this is very sought after by collectors.
And that was made in England?
Beg your pardon?
It was made in England?
That was made in England, London, yes. London Brick Company,
Oh.
LBC. I actually have another one there after she passed away. They sold them out in black. Yeah. Niagara County we're in. This is a brick with Niagara that I believe was made in LaSalle. A fellow did a garden walk in Buffalo, and he said, "Frank, you ought to go down. I got this guy's address. There's a couple of bricks in there I've never seen." I went down on a Sunday morning and knocked on the door, and the fellow gave me 2 of these, and I'd never seen another one in 40 years. Very, very scary. But to talk about the little brickyard that was in Niagara County, it's right up in LaSalle, was the Frontier Brickyard. and they were only in business for about 6 or 7 years. And we had hosted a brick convention at my place. We had 200 people from all over the country and world coming there. And a couple of them decided to go up in a helicopter in Niagara Falls and spotted down on Buffalo Avenue some bricks piled up, and got off the helicopter and found the place, and they found these, and it was here in my backyard, and I didn't know about it. But I sure got down there the next week and was able to find the bricks there frontier. And it's quite a piece. Okay, we got that. Okay. Now, 1778, George Washington decided they're going to build the White House. Okay? In the north yard of the White House was a brickyard run by slaves. I don't know the way they were tearing down all the monuments and this and that there. You'd think they were going to tear the White House down. I don't know what's going to happen in that there. But the brickyard was slave made. This is a presidential seal. In 1951, President Truman renovated the White House. He doled out the brick and the woodwork to congressional people. Several years ago, I was able to acquire this, and they said they think that it should be in the Clement Brick Museum. I agreed with them, and now I'm the owner of that there. So that was quite a thing.
You got a question?
I'm sorry.
I'm confused.
I'm
I'm confused.
Uh-oh,
You said Washington started the White House.
I believe so, yeah.
No,
No.
Adams.
Adam, I would take that back to where I'm doing my research.
Yeah, because he was, Washington was in New York and in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I would not argue with you.
Okay.
I stand to be corrected.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we'll look into that.
I have a question.
Okay.
They're tearing down Bell Aircraft. Can you grab the bill from it?
Where?
Bell Aircraft? No. Bell Aircraft. The aerospace.
I'm sorry, I can't quite.
They are tearing down the offices of the former Bell Aerospace Aircraft plant,
Oh,
just
okay.
the office buildings. She's asking if you've been able to get a brick from that.
No, I had not, no.
I am working on that, so.
Okay.
So,
Talking about bricks, when you remember the Great Northern Elevator downtown, the preservationists and everybody got kicked out of there. I got in through the back door and got some of the bricks, and they have one brick that says the Great Northern Elevator. They would not give nothing to nobody, no historical societies or anything. And the brick buildings there, the elevators, was H. Hall was the owner of the grain elevators and had it built. I wanted one of them because I have a collection of different anchors that went on brick buildings, stars, diamonds, everything like that. I could not get into there to get anything in that there. And they were very, very tough on stuff in that there.
Yeah.
I have that, but there's, of all the millions of bricks that were in there, there was nothing with a mark on it, not a thing. Yeah. Anybody else have a question? Okay. Now, come back here. North Tonawanda. This is a paving brick, street paving brick. Central Clay Projects Company. When they had the Roblin Steel Company, I believe, down here by the railroad tracks along River Road there, I was able to get in there on a Sunday afternoon or someplace like that. I had ideas with a hard hat and clipboard and was pretty versatile with construction people because I worked that for so long. And I found these in a floor in the building there. Have seen very, very few of them, maybe I've collected about 10 of them. The Metzger demolition people have a yard down on River Road there across from the military display museum or whatever, and that there. And I had permission to go into the site anytime I wanted to, and I swear somebody put this on a pile of bricks so that I would see it. I just don't find them anywhere. Somewhere there's streets of them, and yes, ma'am.
When speaking of paving bricks, just ordinary paving bricks, are they all, I guess the word is embossed by the name of the company?
All the paving fire bricks, like I was showing you, there were buffalo on, and building bricks, some of them were stamped 1 in 100, whatever they felt like doing in that there. But most of these, when they come out of the mold, they were flipped out, because they was a spacer, and if the road held up good, the bricks were good, that was advertising for it. And that's it. But there are so many different, companies, it's unbelievable. Orchard Park made a paving brick, Harry Yates, and the only place that you will find them is on the golf course that he owned, where he had the brickyard originally, because he owned the Hotel Lafayette, and shipped the stuff to Buffalo, and they're in the cistern up in the woods there, and that's the only place we've ever found them. And that's it. Some they had to make thousands of millions of them, but where'd they go? Now here, the brick industry in the Hudson River era was monstrous. From Troy, New York to New York City, there were almost 600 different brickyards. Very, very labor intensified, and that there. Dad would start work 4 o'clock in the morning, get the fires going and doing the bricks. 9, 10 o'clock, the kids would come with Dad's beer or sandwich. They had to take the bricks and turn them over to get the moisture out of them before they could handle those, to take them and put them into the kilns to fire them. They had to get a certain amount of moisture. So the kids would come along with the dog would walk over. I have several different ones, raccoons, dogs, cats, everything you can imagine. One little boy decided he'd put his footprint in there, in that. So that was a thing there. But the brick industry further down in New York, I'm going to check my notes because you correct me. Wall Street in 1835 had a big monstrous fire. 13 acres burned out. The building codes all changed, built with brick. Hudson River, all the immigrants, it flourished, it was a monster. 1666, London also had a fire. London had some impressive bricks still today that are being found. Okay, well, 1871, Mrs. O'Leary kicked the lantern over, a hot time in the old town tonight. That was 1871, and I have bricks that actually burnt from there. And that, so, well, I have my notes.
I'm not that good, I just know a little bit about American history.
Okay. Now, in 1887, Frank Braun, the Yellow Brick Road, was from Chittenango. But in 1887, he went to Poughkeepsie on the paddle wheel, and got off and said, "Where is the military academy?" The statement was, "Follow the Yellow Brick Road up the hill." These came out of a station up in the top of the hill several years ago. I was able to liberate 20 of them, and that there. Recently, I have a friend down in Oneida, and down in Chittenango is a Yellow Brick Road memorabilia there. They took up the bricks, and this fellow decided that I should have one, but it was a concrete brick, and they were spackling apart, but it was yellow and what have you, but he decided. Well, what he did, he got the documentation with the Munchkin sign in it. And that there. So that was an unusual piece, so you can see.
Yeah.
Pass it around to it. I have a bad knee. Yeah, good. People really like those. We were talking about different bricks. This is a Hall and Sons down on Niagara Street. Fort Tompkins, one of the Peace Bridges, there was a fort overlooking the Niagara River. We went down through there and did some construction. We exposed some of the old kilns. And there were probably 50 of these that I acquired and got into the collection. A collector from Kansas drove with a trailer load of bricks to get this buffalo brick to have it in his collection. That's how scarce it was. And today I've still got several different ones there. But Hall and Son was located at the corner of Niagara and Squajacata, where Fedders used to be down in there, the Squajacata Creek. They mined the clay from New Jersey and shipped it up by canal, because the Buffalo locale, there's no clay deposits that are worth for there. Most of the bricks in the Buffalo area are shale brick, made of shale pulverized as clay, adding water and stuff like that. But to make a refractory brick calls for a higher grade than that there. These are very rare, very scarce, and tough to find.
Wow.
Lumber City, we know in North Tonawanda, Lumber City, capital of the world. One of my last construction jobs was down to Smith Boys Marina on the river for one of the chemical plants. I think it might have been Occidental, I'm not sure now what. But the lagoon there was all saturated with stuff that smelled like mothballs. They were very highly contaminated. Anything had to be decontaminated and that there. But I spotted somebody threw this brick up on the side for me and that there, that was lumber. I'd never seen another one. I don't know why it's a refractory brick, but there should be hundreds of them around. I have them from Lumber City, Pennsylvania, marked with PA, but not just the plain Lumber City.
So when you get a bunch the same, you trade them with other people?
Yes, I do.
For
Yeah,
something you don't
we
have?
trade almost worldwide and that there, brick for brick. We keep the poor guys and everybody at an even keel. But up in my category, there's some pretty high-end trading, very scarce, rare stuff. Some of the stuff I have is only one of a kind. And that, The Hudson River had a Shamrock Brick Company. My little Irish descent there, like that. I went to the site down near Kingston and found maybe 10 different varieties of the Shamrock bricks and that there. So they're a nice collectible piece. They all are, for that matter. Okay. Chestnut Ridge is not the Chestnut Ridge in Orchard Park. This was made for the Larkin Soap Company office building by Frank Lloyd Wright. Frank Lloyd Wright demanded the highest quality material. This particular white clay come out of Philadelphia and that there. When they tore down the Larkin Soap Company, these bricks were there. I had permission to go in at noontime and salvage what I wanted and that there. And people with the Pan American and the people with Larkin Soap Company come in and demanded that they really wanted them. And lo and behold, as much as I travel around, there's a bridge an eighth of a mile up the street from me, and they rebuilt our road, Mile Strip Road. Don't you know that the abutment there was filled with these bricks?
Wow.
Back in the 1900s or 15s, 20s and that there, these guys that went to jail didn't just go there and watch TV and football games and three squares. They worked on the farms or they worked in the brickyard. I have several different varieties from all over the country, Oregon, what have you. I have one brick that's United States military prison, Leavenworth, Kansas. There, like I say, another one is where Shellshaft Redemption was made in the prison in, I forgot what town, in Ohio. The warden in the 1935 and 40 taking the bricks out with the Ohio Reformatory logo on them and selling them for $25 a piece. And now if we get to railroad people, New York Central Lines. Okay, I hit the honey hole out in Ohio, found them, knew where the brickyard was and that there. A fella called me up one night, a bottle collector, and says, Frank, they got a New York Central brick at the auction. Would you be interested in it? I said, yeah, I would pay $75 to $100 for it. He called me up the next day, he said, Frank, the brick is yours. I said, well, Bob, what do I owe you? He says, $35 too much? I did give him a 50. But this particular brick is the only one known because it's a sidewalk paving brick. It was in the railroad platform somewhere for that there. The other ones that we have in the collection are much wider and heavier and just a little bit longer. And that's the variety, and it's the only one that we've ever seen. I have all the other ones there, Wabash, all the different ones, the 20th century, Pullman, and whatever. When they were relocating the Indians all over the country, out to Oklahoma, Kansas, and that there, the Comanches made bricks. There's only 6 of these to be known. And a fellow in Oklahoma decided that I should have that in the collection. I was very pleased with that. I have Seneca, I have from New York, Onondaga, and just all different kinds. I actually have one that's got the swastika on it, but it is a Navajo Indian peace symbol out of Texas. And that keep it kind of on segments, just don't bring up any feelings or anything like that. And I must have probably 15, 20 different Indian type brick materials. Here's a brick with a horseshoe on it, Schmidt. Okay, Schmidt was out where the present day Boston Valley terracotta plant is. They're a world renowned terracotta plant. They have 200 people working there around the clock. In the 1860s, it started out making flower pots. That there. I got on the sites many times in that there, could never find too much of anything. They had an S that only looked like a chain hook, but any which way you went with it, it was backwards, it was nothing. So Schmidt merged with Alexander Brush. Alexander Brush was one of the largest brick companies in western New York. He also was a very religious man, and he became mayor of Buffalo, Alexander Brush, 1887. 1887, Father Baker built the orphanages and the basilica, myself being a Father Baker boy, so I have a little touch of that. When they built the orphanage there, they evidently went to the Schmidt Brickyard in Brush for donations for the bricks. And for some reason, they put the horseshoe on there. It could also mean U.S. and that there, but we put it to the Schmidt Brickyard and that there. Evidently, he didn't want to mix politics with religion and everything like that back then and that there. They were very sought after. I had some that the boys etched their name in with a nail and stuff like that. Another trip to Columbia, Missouri. Who that is? Mark Twain. This is going back to Mark Twain in the 1880s because he does not have that big bushy hair like he did when he was in Elmira and in Buffalo and that there. This went up for an auction and I wanted it real bad because I'm a fan of Mark Twain. I have some flasks that are quite old and what have the different stuff from them and that there, and then books and that there. People told me, why would you want to bother trying to get something like that? I said, because I like it and that there. And they said, it's probably just plaster Paris and that. It is a fireplace brick. It was put on the side of a fireplace and that there. And it went for several $100s and I was able to get it. And that went like hotcakes. I got a friend in Salisbury, North Carolina, runs a brickyard. He duplicated the mold and he put numbers on them so they couldn't be, take the affinity off of this one here in particular. Very good item. John McClure had a plantation in Lexington, Virginia in 1841. fellow bottle collector out of Utica, Syracuse, said, I have something you might like. He had 3 different bricks. One was the John McClure initials, the 1841, and I recall what the other one was there. He says, I think you should have those. He says, and he gave them to me, and I was quite pleased with that. Slave-made stuff is very, very hard to come by. I have quite a bit of stuff from Pensacola, Florida, and what have you. Now, this is Mr. Abraham Lincoln. I have in the collection probably 15 different Lincoln bricks. Higner, Texas made them, the banks made them, and that there. The top quality bricks were made in Equality, Illinois. I did a lecture for a steam engine show down in Ohio, and an old gentleman come up to me and he said, he says, I have one of them Lincoln bricks at home. He said, I've had for 40 years. I said, well, can I get your address? And when I pass through that way, I can stop and see you. So in a month or two, I called him and I talked to him. And I said, is there any possibility you might want to donate it to the museum or sell it? And his wife said, it's been on the shelf for 40 years collecting dust. You should do something with it. So when I went down there, this brick being black is what you call fired. It's not like a building brick like these with dog print on. It's what you call vitrified. When it's in the kilns, it's fired to a point that it almost liquefies, and all of a sudden it fuses right together in that there. That way it's impervious to water and chemicals and what have you. I didn't pay too much on that. I asked the gentleman, I said, would you take a $50 bill for it? He said, that's pretty good interest. He said, yes, I would. So I did. When I got it home and I looked at it, being heavy, I knew that it was vitrified because I'd known some of the history of the people in the brickyard down there. I also noticed that there were watermarks along the edges. So now I said, this was put in the sidewalk. The ones that they made down there were most of them were put into a building. They weren't vitrified. The gentleman that made this fought in the Civil War at Gettysburg, got wounded, and went back to the brickyard and made the mold of this brick. He put them in the sidewalk in front of his house. The people were liberating them, so he put them in a cistern and that there. They become very scarce, very rare. I didn't realize that, but I've investigated the brick very much. When I looked on the back, he signed his name, white. Just triple, doubled everything you can imagine with the Equality Illinois Historical Society. They had told me we got a waiting list. He said, if you would just think of $2,000, he says, we'll send you a check for it. And I said, no, it's not going anyplace right now. So I'm quite pleased. I have some that were made for the Equality Illinois Historical Society that are very rare in that there. And I have some of them that are having damage, broken too, that are very scarce, but not as scarce as this one here. And that's it. In 1907, there was a tuberculosis epidemic, Kansas, Texas, Oklahoma. Dr. William Crombine was the public health commissioner of Kansas. He came out with the logo, swat the fly. They didn't know where tuberculosis was actually coming from. In the trains, they got rid of the common drinking dipper. They got rid of the hand towels and used roll towels. He then decided that he should make the brick don't spit on the sidewalk, because he decided that the women were walking around with long skirts, but the farmers all chewed tobacco. And they didn't care. and the kids were crawling around the floor, and that's the way this epidemic there. He's very renowned and very historical figure. You can go in Kansas and Oklahoma today and see these in different brick sidewalks and that thing. I know several people that said they knew people that tried to get one out. You might get it to the trunk of your car, but you're going to see the judge and it's gonna cost you $300. And you won't get the brick. So, now, if anybody has any questions at all, like I say, I tried to bring a variety of stuff, and hope that gets. Oh, these are the ones that the lady brought, and found down here in Niagara Falls Boulevard. And the gentleman over there brought some, and I told him what the one I thought was, and this particular brick. And these were paving bricks, and we're putting the different roads around it. Maybe probably down in Niagara Falls for some reason. And this is a building brick, Paul Minnick, out of Boston, New York, there. It just went out of business. And that's a concrete back in there. You can see there's a tab for holding it in the wall. And that, if you go in the Hudson River, there's millions of them. And that, the Hudson River was a neat place to go there because you'd go when the tide was out. And you would stack up stuff, but if you went down the river and that there and decided to come back, as that tide come in, your stuff is out in the river, there a couple hundred feet, not that many one time. But the people are welcome to come out and see us in Orchard Park, especially this weather is finally gonna break. And that there, and we'd be glad to show you 10,000 bricks, different names on them, and different varieties of stuff in that there. And,
What are the hours of the museum? What are the hours of the museum?
by a phone call, if you go on my webpage,
Oh,
there's
so it's
a
by
phone number.
appointment?
Yeah, yeah. Saturday, Sunday, it doesn't matter, even the weekends, the weather's pretty nice. Yeah, and we have plenty of time, different stuff to do. Yeah.
You mentioned when you're talking about one of the bricks that was found down near the Peace Bridge, and you've mentioned something about that there aren't that many clay deposits in the area?
Well, there's clay deposits there, but most of it is shale. See, shale ground up is clay, the water in it. If, for instance, you went up to 219 to Boston and went up the hill, you would see the shale mounds, that's what the bricks are.
But no, I know that there, here in Illinois, in the city of Tonawanda, the North Tonawanda, the Kohler bricks. And I know the area inside the city of Tonawanda, along the river, that some of the older people still refer to as Clay Hill. And I always thought, well, that tells me that's where the Kohler family was.
Well, there might be a certain amount of it, but I don't think it was because Paul and Son, that one that made the Buffalo brick there, they imported all the fireplace. But the building was kind of one that had a brick factory with TV on it. I didn't bring it home.
Yeah. But anyway, I've heard of Kohler brick and
The other one, Peach Hill.
and why do they call this area, Clay Hill?
Grand Island is where we declared it was never a brick yard over there, that's a mom and pop operation.
I got a question. What, the bricks from all different time periods seem to be the similar size, almost exactly the same size. And are they composed the same way? Is it like a percentage of clay and a percentage of other
I'm
ingredients?
not into the chemical background of it too much there, but I know Hoover standardized any kind of building brick and that there. But I have bricks that I have one from 1832 that was found down in Catherine Street in a fireplace because it's distorted and it's X1832 when Buffalo was incorporated as a city. And it's smaller, thinner than that there. The Hull House in in Lancaster there. They had the kiln right on the site, and that there, none of those were marked. That's where you find the variations of cat prints and that, and I have some that's got Copenhagen snuff cans stuck in two different brickyards, and I think the guy went from the one brickyard when it shut down and went to the other. And I got the Copenhagen stuff emblems so clear that I could highlight it, and you could tell it was Copenhagen stuff. And then somebody called me and said, "Do you have a Copenhagen brick?" I said, "Well, not from Denmark, no." I said, No. He said, and there was two of them found, and the two brickyards were 30 miles apart, and I think he went from one place to the other, and took that Copenhagen, stamped it right in the middle. The other ones, I got the crescent line, waterfall, and everything like that. Yes, ma'am?
How did you get started with this?
Well, believe it or not, my high school thesis was Roman road building. But, I was always out, looking for arrowheads and digging around the creeks and stuff like that. And I went into the military, and when I come back out down in the construction, I said all these different sites that I'm in Pennsylvania, and there's stuff that comes in the river, and I started picking the stuff up and finding it out. And then I found out that there was a club back that started in I got in 88 or 89, and it started in 86. So I'm one of the new early members of that. So it's a fun hobby, and like I say, we don't sell stuff, we trade, but there's high-end trading. You gotta have something pretty good if you want to deal with me or whatever. They come up with stuff all the time that we don't have, and add to the collection. I got stuff on the floors that I don't have no room for shelving and what have you. But it's fun. And, a lot of cleaning. You can't take a hammer and start chipping on something like that and breaking letters off and that there. So it's a lot there. So like I say, people are welcome to come out and see us, if there's a group or any which way you want.
Yeah. Just a couple of things. I was happy to have you over recently with a friend who came to visit my place. Alfred Walanek was in charge of the Wheatfield Construction Company. He was a master mason craftsman of the old school fashion. I could tell when he came up to the house, he knew exactly what he was looking at because all that stone was laid in such a way that they just don't do anymore. And we went out back and so forth and grabbed a few samples for his collection, so I'm happy to have donated. Also, in my travels, having worked here and there, I used to work at the Buffalo Zoo, and I worked at the switchboard office there. Going down into where the locker areas is for the employees and everything, used to be other things. One of the tile blocks in the wall actually has a bicycle tire pattern that just somebody ran right over that as they were drying somewhere in the mid-1930s, and it was installed like that. I looked around wherever it was appropriate to see, if I could see another one of those, but just one bicycle trail tire mark in there. And over at the intermediate school at Lewiston Porter, where I also worked, the arena floor, as it slopes, it's not a brick thing, but as the cement floor slopes to the stage area there, toward the top and off to the right a bit, if you're standing on the stage looking to the right, just barely in the low light, I could see a bunch of cat prints, paw prints in the cement. And so 1947, 48, thereabouts, there was a cat running around on the wet cement when that area was a farm and became a place. Apparently the cats didn't agree, and they still hung around over there, and so forth. And finally, this boulevard here was laid out in Wurlitzer, by the Wurlitzer Company, with cobblestones. And as this intersection, Ward Road and Niagara Falls Boulevard, was unearthed to put in the new culvert, I pulled out a few of those for the collection for North Tonawanda History Museum and so forth. So when those things come up,
It's ironic how you find bricks that are marked, but if you know the cobblestone district up at 104 and 78, there's a little museum up there, and there's like a church, but it's like a center, and that there, and in the patio are J. Loeffler bricks from Albion, New York. And there's a historical marker where they mined the clay up there, and these bricks are from 1850, and I was able to have one.
Wow.
Yeah.
What's
never know.
the rarest brick you have in your collection that you can disclose?
Well, the White House for sure. And Mark Twain. There's several. I just can't ring a bell on them right now.
What's the
I have some old Massachusetts stuff.
What's the weirdest one? like the oddest brick you have? That just stands out for some reason.
I got one with Mickey Mouse on it where Glen Gary Brick Company was infringing on Disney's things and they made them quit making them.
Okay, good.
Some of us, we look at old homes and we try to sometimes estimate the age of a home by looking at its foundation. You know, a lot of homes around here in the 1800s were made of field stones.
Right.
At some point, they started using concrete blocks. And now you mentioned that there are concrete bricks. Were bricks ever used for a foundation? I mean, you see them in the upper part of the structure.
Well, they've been used for foundations in Ohio, Pennsylvania. Actually, it's a paving brick, it's a vitrified brick that would withstand the elements. Most of your building bricks don't stand the elements. And they actually have a building brick, they call it a face brick, and it's tempered more than the regular filler bricks. The inside walls in some of the houses, they thought that was an insulation, keep it cool and warm.
Now, as we started talking here, I was thinking, is there kind of a standard process for brick making, how bricks are manufactured or made? That sounds like the way you talk, different bricks have different consistencies, different raw materials, they're kilned in a different way. I don't know if there's any kind of a theme in terms of brick making, in terms of the process in which they're made.
Just like I say, I know the Hudson River, and they started out with the firewood kiln wood, and they got the coal, and they got the gas, and now everything's electric.
But like around here, now you say they use shale, and they mix it with water. And then is that, they would just make that mix and put it in the kiln, or were there other?
Well, they would put it into a mold, depending on how much, and then sometimes it was a wire cut that they were stiff enough that they could put them right into the kiln. In the early days, they had to take them where you see the dog print and that they're out in a mammoth drying yard, and they had to turn them maybe 2 or 3 times to get the moisture out of them because if they start stacking them and then they would collapse. I have a lot of bricks that are cold or just.
Were there other ingredients besides the shale or clay? Is anything else mixed with them, or?
I really don't know, because I don't get involved with the chemical end of it. And that I know if firing the vitrified, it's got to be fired enough that it almost turns to liquid and fuses together.
The heat, the temperature and the heating is probably a factor, right?
Because in the old days, standard fires were the kiln fires there. They worked them for 12 days, I know, to keep them fires going to get what they wanted out of there. And the fire brick, the other ones like the Buffalo there, was a very expensive high heat. They last forever, you can put them in the sidewalk or anything back there. Because you just imagine in them open house and them furnaces, the heat that they withstood. And sometimes you will find them. This one now, it's not. Sometimes the ends of them will fuse and turn to glass.
Yeah.
I have several like that. They're pretty neat.
What is that paw print? Is it a bear?
What?
The paw print, is it a bear?
I'm sorry.
The paw print.
Is it a dog print, a bear print, or?
It's like a bear.
Oh, this here? No, I think it's a dog.
Yeah.
It's a dog?
Yeah. What do you think?
A bear.
You think so?
I don't know.
Big dog.
That's a big dog. Yeah,
dog.
that's a big dog. Yeah.
I could change my itinerary and tell them it's a bear.
I really don't know.
I have one from Yankee Stadium, when they tore it down, a contractor sent me, it's got the blue paint on it. And the people wouldn't pay attention too much to that there, and I'd say, well, Babe Ruth hit his 58th home run, here's his sludger. And they're looking, and they said, how did you ever come across it? Well, I said, well, you've got to pay attention. I don't know if you want to say that's a bear, I'll look into that. Yeah.
You can look up different animal prints.
Yeah, I almost look like a raccoon, really raccoon.
Yeah. So I think that pretty well wraps me up.
Okay.
A couple more questions.
Sure.
Go ahead.
I have to correct my earlier statement. I just checked, Google. Washington was involved, George Washington was involved in the planning of the White House.
Okay.
But John Adams was the first one to live there, and it
Yep.
really wasn't completed at that time.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're
I know.
both right.
Okay, all right.
Because I think there's something that's attributed to, the mantle in the East Room. There's a quote from John Adams about everyone who was there, and, so that's stuck in my mind. But,
Okay.
so George Washington, even though he didn't live there.
I have a brick in the collection that's quite rare, would be the lost head of George Washington from New Jersey. But it's not to be, 1700s or early 1800s, I think it's, late 1800s, early 1900s, yeah. Yeah. But that's what happened.
You mentioned the concentration of brick makers from Troy down New York City sometimes, and there had to be, hundreds just here in Western New York. They're everywhere.
Yes, they're everywhere. Most of the places are mom and pop operations on a farm. And the kilns were right there, made the bricks, and that's where you like to find an old, homestead, and Texas chimneys and that. I have some from Dakota Territory, Dakota Indian Territory. They actually got square holes in them where they put the nails in the fireplace. And a fellow that was in the Air Force was hunting out there and found them in an old abandoned cabin. He bought me 3 of them. That's where the hunters started. Hudson River was real good until 9/11. If you take a boat, and that's where you have to go, but if you pull up any place near a bridge or that, their Homeland Security is right there. They're checking it. We've been checked out several times. That's tough. Good, honest people like us, looking for bricks. And then people go into towns and go to the highway department, or you see an old timer sitting on the porch, and you talk to them, and, oh yeah, down in Kentucky, he says, we came back down from a brickyard and dressed in sneakers and dungarees, it was warm. So I go over and talk to the old gentleman, and he says, did anybody get bit by a snake? And we're looking at him. He says, I wouldn't go up there this time of the year, it's infested with copperhead snakes. Never seen a snake. Worst thing is spiders. I seen a bear one time in the Hudson River. He went the opposite way, and that was not the spiders are bad bites. I've got some nasty spider bites.
Yeah.
And out of Pennsylvania, the deer ticks are bad. You got to be careful.
I have another question.
Sure.
Are any buildings, I'm thinking especially houses, built today that are completely brick, or is it just a brick facade they put on the front of it? And are those bricks that they might be using today in construction created differently?
Yes, where the fires are electrically furnace, I know that. If you take an old brick like that, and got like a horseshoe brick, and if you wanted to, and you put it down and throw it on the sidewalk, it'll ring. And most of the other bricks that they make today, it wasn't like this brick. They're very well made back in the day. And that's why the old guy in Kansas says we were looking for a certain type of brick. Oh, the Cherokee Indian brick in Macomb, Georgia. I've got quite a collection of those, and the old timer says, yeah, this is the reason you can't find them, because the bricks were so good, the buildings aren't falling down or burning. And then I called somebody, checked on my webpage, and a woman called me from someplace down in Georgia and told me it was an old cemetery, and she sent a picture of the brick, and it was a Macomb, Georgia Cherokee brick. And I called my buddy, the collector down there. He immediately went up the next day, called and said, I can't find nothing, I can't find a thing. The church burnt down in 1910, and that there. He says, I'm coming across the cemetery, and he walked into the cemetery with and they built the cemeteries that were raised, and it was lined with bricks around it. Well, he liberated 3 of those, and I got one there. I said, did you cover his feet up when you took that? Most of the time, we find out if you ask people in permission, we do quite well. And as you're going out the yard, well, what are they worth? We pay $3-4 a brick, we don't mind. I've paid plenty for some of them.
Is there a difference between a paver, a street paving brick, and a cobblestone brick?
A cobblestone and a street paver are the same thing. But most people sometimes they call them cobblestone, which is wrong. I call them cobblestone, like in the district in Buffalo, they're the red quarried sandstone. They're red in that there, and that's why people might think they're
We're
bricks.
familiar with cobblestones that they made houses out of, which were a rounded stone from the creek. But I'm wondering how that.
Yes.
What is the Medina sandstone, made of? The Medina sandstone?
Yeah.
What is that made out of?
That's the red quarried sandstone in Medina. It's all red sandstone. You'll see it generally anywhere in Buffalo, the curbstones are Medina sandstone.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of the roads are the red curbstone, the streets are brick. 90% of the streets in Buffalo were brick, but they were mostly paved over and taken out. So the Medina sandstone is, weather resistant and very nice.
Some bricks are dark red, and they have holes in them, there are maybe 6 or 8 holes. What was the point?
The reason for that is the main thing was to save clay. And when you put them in the furnace, they're stacked so that the holes are going different ways. Then the heat goes through them a lot quicker and cuts down on the kiln time. The firewood time.
So what would they use them for to build?
Oh, there's regular houses and everything. Yeah.
Okay, so.
And it gives you a stronger bond of the mortar because the concrete, the mortar is going into them holes. And that there, they call that a frog. The other brick over there with the shamrock, the indentation is a frog, so that it would bond better with things. But in the Hudson River, clay deposits were running out. They were supplying New York City barges and everything to rebuild it after the fires. So if you made 1 million bricks with that frog in there, only a 1/4 of an inch, or some of them were a 1/2 inch to an inch deep, you're making millions more bricks,
I guess it adds up.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I have some of those, and it's like, I don't know what.
Yeah, and, we just call a brick with no name on it, generic, there's just no way. It's hard to trace unless it's, the history of the property and that there.
And I have some other ones that have something stamped on them, I don't know what it is.
Yeah,
I just-
might more than likely be Hanley or something like that. Yeah. There were a lot of brick companies around. Buffalo had about 27 in that there, but a lot of them didn't. I'm looking for one that was supposed to be vendor on it, and I never found one. We got documentation of over 30,000 brickyards in the United States from the 1700s up to present. Out there. And probably 80% of them weren't marked. And all of a sudden you find something that's marked.
Well, thank you very much, Frank.
Well, yes, it's a pleasure coming up here. Come out and see us, Orchard Park. Take a look at your new stadium.